You're between two identities. You didn't get here by accident. You created this. The exhaustion that shows up here isn't always because you're doing too much. There's a tension, a force. It's actually a sign of movement. That feeling is not a problem. There comes a point in your life where the version of you that built everything simply doesn't feel like the version that's meant to take you forward. And that's what we're going to dive into today, because for most people, this moment is often misunderstood. People assume that it means something is wrong, or that they've lost their edge, or that they're ungrateful for what they've created. But most of the time, none of that is actually true. Because let's face it, what you did worked. It all worked. The strategies worked. The habits worked. The way you held yourself worked. You didn't get here by accident. You created this. It's simply that now there's a quiet, or maybe, in some cases, not so quiet, sense that the way that you've been operating no longer feels like the right fit for the life you're desiring to live. And I want to slow this part down, because this is usually where people try to rush themselves. They want to explain it away or label it quickly. They want to know what it is so they can do something about it. But most real transitions don't arrive with clean language or obvious answers. They arrive as a feeling first. And sometimes that's friction, a sense that something is changing internally before you know how to articulate it. I think it's that idea of something feeling off. And I want you to know that that feeling is not a problem. It's information. It's letting you know that the internal structure you've been living from is starting to feel too small for the life that you're inhabiting now. I see this play out often with my clients. So here we've got people who know how to show up, who know how to take responsibility, who have built real success through consistency and self-discipline. What they're often trying to articulate isn't confusion about what to do next, but a subtle mismatch between who they've been and who they're becoming. So let me know if this resonates, because they will say things like, I can still do this, but it just feels heavier. Or I don't understand why something that used to feel so simple now takes so much energy. And underneath these words, when I'm listening to them, is a deeper awareness. They're aware that something internal is asking to shift, even if it's not yet clear what that shift looks like. So here's the part that I really want you to get. This is important, because the confusion here is not lack of clarity. It's actually a sign of movement. You're between two identities. The old one no longer fits, and the new one has not been fully formed yet. I have yet to meet someone that finds that in-between space comfortable. It can feel disorienting because the reference points that used to guide you, well, they don't work the same way anymore. Every life, mine, yours, it's all built through an identity, a way of being that shapes how you relate to responsibility, effort, and yourself. That identity is formed early and refined over years of meeting expectations, external validation, and proving capability. It learns how to stay composed, how to push through discomfort, how to be the reliable one. This identity isn't accidental or wrong in any way. It's adaptive, it's intelligent, and for a long time, it's exactly what allowed you to build stability, success, and momentum in your life and your work. It worked as it was meant to work. This idea isn't new. In psychology, leadership, and even in spiritual traditions, identity has always been understood as a regulating force. Dr. Maxwell Maltz, who wrote the amazing book, Psycho-Cybernetics, talks about self-image as this internal thermostat. It sets the range of what feels normal, safe, and achievable. When your life begins to exceed what that internal setting was designed to hold, tension shows up. And it's not because something is wrong, but it is because the system hasn't been recalibrated yet. Okay, so actually everything is very, very right. Your identity did exactly what it was designed to do. It helped you survive. It helped you succeed. And now it's showing you its limits, which is incredible information, because identity, like anything else that creates structure, has limits. Over time, the same patterns that once felt empowering can start to feel restrictive. And that, my friends, is what feels off. You may still be effective, but it takes more from you. You may still be leading, but it doesn't feel easy. And it's not that you've lost your edge. It's that the capacity of the identity that you're operating from has been fully utilized. You're maxed out at that identity. Storage is full. You know, when you get that, cloud storage is full. And when that happens, continuing to rely on it begins to feel effortful rather than supportive. This is also where many people run into what Gay Hendricks, love Gay Hendricks, calls the upper limit. Instead of allowing more ease, success, or expansion, we unconsciously return to effort, tension, overmanagement, sabotage. And it's not because we don't want more, but it's because our identity doesn't feel safe holding it. Not yet. So when things feel heavier, it's often not because you've reached your limit. It's because you're approaching the edge of what your current identity recognizes as familiar. At this stage, most people instinctively look for external adjustments. They revisit strategy, structure, time management, or productivity, hoping that a better configuration will restore the sense of flow that they used to have. So what they're doing is trying to change something on the outside. But what's often happening, it's not a tactical issue. It's that the inner posture you've been living from no longer matches the scope of your life. You're trying to move into a more expansive chapter while still holding yourself the way you did when everything depended on you pushing, managing, and holding it together. So that is also why this phase can be so frustrating. On paper, nothing is wrong. There's nothing wrong enough to justify how it feels. From the outside, everything looks fine. And yet internally, the cost of continuing the same way becomes harder and harder to ignore. This is where your leadership starts to change, right here, quietly. The question now moves from how do I do more to how do I relate differently? Who do I be when it comes to responsibility, control, and myself? This is where the idea of identity as infrastructure can become useful. Your identity determines what feels natural and what requires effort. When your identity and your life are aligned, things move with less friction. Decisions feel clearer. You're not going back and forth in your mind. This happened right now, right before I was filming this podcast. I was on a call with a client. She had an opportunity. When she looked at it through her identity, it was so clear that this was not the right opportunity for her. So this is when leadership starts to feel embodied rather than hard. You can have the conversations that you need to have. You can know what to do. So even with this client, she knows what her next step is, and she can do it immediately, event to action, tell the people that this is not a fit for her. When they're misaligned, even simple things can feel heavy. The exhaustion that shows up here isn't always because you're doing too much. It's often because you're being someone who has to stay vigilant, responsible, and in control in order for things to work. There's a tension, a force. One way to notice this is to look at where effort is still required just to maintain what you've already built, where things don't fall apart without you, but they don't quite flow either. This is often a sign that your identity is still positioned as the stabilizer, the one who makes things work, rather than the one who sets the conditions for things to work. This is also the point where people label what they're feeling as burnout. And sometimes they're right, but very often, especially for many people, it's something more specific. It's actually outgrowing an identity that was built around necessity. And that identity knew how to strive, how to push, how to keep going. It was designed for a chapter, a season, but the next chapter usually doesn't require more effort. It requires a different relationship to yourself and to power. And this can be hard to get your head around when you're used to operating a certain way and it actually gave you results. When clients come to work with me, this is the part that can feel illogical because I'm not giving them a strategy per se. I'm giving them an opportunity to shift how they see themselves both personally and professionally. This is why identity work at this level often feels subtle, because when identity shifts, behavior starts to reorganize naturally. Decisions change without force. Boundaries become clearer without effort. Leadership becomes more spacious. And it's not because you're trying to be different. You are different. As identity begins to evolve, the change is all, honestly, it's not dramatic. It doesn't come with a big decision. Something may not even change externally. Most of the time, it's quiet. You notice that you no longer want to force things. You find yourself less interested in proving, explaining, or justifying. Your authority starts to feel less like something you assert, and it's really more like something that you inhabit. The way you lead becomes simpler, cleaner, and more contained because you no longer grip to an outdated version of yourself, to tools or actions, even though those tools and actions worked at one point. This comes from being really clear on your next level and who you need to be to have it and to hold on to it. And that matters, okay? This last part matters. That is sustaining what you have created rather than reverting back to overfunctioning. Identity evolution isn't just about expansion. It's about capacity. And it's about becoming someone for whom that next level feels normal rather than stressful. Outgrowing an identity doesn't mean dismissing who you were. We love who you were. We love all the versions. It means recognizing that that version did exactly what it was meant to do. That version of you created the foundation that allows this next stage to be possible. But that version of you was never meant to be permanent, and now that's it. You don't ride into the sunset with that version of you. Identity evolution is a natural part of leadership and maturity and life, even though we don't talk about it that way. It's not about becoming more driven. It's about becoming more aligned with your next level. If you've been feeling stuck at a certain level of success, I want you to know that you are not behind. You're not lost. You're simply in a transition that often goes unnamed. And that is what leadership feels like right before it recalibrates. So instead of asking what you need to fix or optimize, allow yourself to sit with a different question. Who have I been that has gotten me here, and who do I need to be to get me to my next level? And if you want to go deeper into this, if you really want to unpack this, like go deep, I suggest my self-image intensive program. In the program, I take you through a 4-week process to move from the old identity to the new one. So I'm with you every step of the way. You're not going through that time, going through the unknown on your own. The link is in the notes section of the podcast if and when you wish to check it out. Will you do me a favor? If there is somebody in your life that you know needs to hear this episode, will you send it to them? If this episode was really helpful for you, will you share it on your social media? Would you also rate, review, download, subscribe, do all of the things, because that is what affects the algorithm and allows this type of content to reach more people. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you here for the next one.